This episode of the PC Perspective Podcast is brought to you by Lenovo. See more at Lenovo.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode number 398 for March. May 4th, 2016. Yeah.
You're Alan Malventano.
I'm
It's
Alan
true, he
Malventano.
is.
Yep. Who else is here?
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom, still.
I'm Slick 50.
Yep. Slick 50, also known as Josh Walroth. And
May the 4th be with you.
Yeah, Ken's here. Contrary to...
Someone had to do it.
Yeah, well, you know, we needed someone to switch. So I kind of went and kidnapped him from Cincy and just dragged him back here by his ears. Yep, we're here. Got a little delayed start. Sorry for the guys in the chat. Turns out internet is doing weird things tonight while we're trying to stream this live. For those of you listening after the fact, well, you know, you don't have a delay. You just started playing your podcast as soon as you download it, I guess. Assuming that works at the rate the internet's going.
Hey, my hands are off on that one. That's all you tomorrow.
Well, yeah, that too.
Just put 30 seconds or 30 minutes of silence at the beginning.
That's what I'll do.
And then
go.
No, 30 minutes of tech support at the beginning.
Yes. Just like I'll find some pre-recorded tech support calls.
Oh, there's a really good line that you probably heard earlier this week. The voicemail?
What voicemail?
The mastered operator from hell?
Oh, no, I haven't heard
Extension
that.
666?
Oh,
if you haven't heard it, it's a work of art.
I might have to listen to that. All right.
Really.
All right, let's get into this stuff. So we're here. If you want to follow our stuff, if you didn't already know how to follow it, it's pcpro.com/podcast. Do we still run that email?
Dang.
I
still
wouldn't
have it.
I wouldn't say we probably still have it. I think it's podcast at pcpro.com. I'm not sure if Ryan
Just
even
plug
checks
Ryan
anymore.
on Twitter instead.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's like the new email.
Get him on Twitter. Ping me on Twitter if it's storage stuff. Ping Josh on Twitter if it's hot dog stuff.
No.
You know. Ping Jeremy on Twitter if it's news stuff. Ping Ken on Twitter if it's 3D printing stuff. You know. All right. So yeah, twitter.com/Ryan Shrout, twitter.com/PCPer. It's where, you know, we talk about the stuff. Tech stuff. So, might as well just jump right into it.
Do we have to?
Yes, we do.
I guess we don't have a choice.
If you go to pcpro.com/subscribe, we can tell you about when we hope that the show will start. Subject to delays. You have to read fine print, which there is none. But we have a mailing list. It's a real simple mailing list. All we do is just simple blasts out like, hey, we're about to start recording either the podcast or if we have somebody in studio, or any kind of a live event that we're doing. That's all we use it for. We don't send anything else out. We don't ask for money there. However, we do have a Patreon. We encourage any and all donations to the Church of PC Perspectology. Yeah, that might actually be a thing. Anyway.
No, it's a Church of Responsive Technology.
Yes, I don't know. The name's still going like back and forth. We're accepting like, you know, suggestions for the name of the church related to PC Perspective or technology or reviewing computer hardware or whatever.
And for this time only, when you donate during the show, Ryan is actually going to have to read these out loud to his extended family.
Yeah.
So you won't see it, but you'll know something brilliant is happening.
See, that's kind of sad. Like, I would read them out, but I don't just have like Ryan's email pulled up right here. So
Why not? You worked for the NSA.
I used to work for the NSA.
Yeah, I said worked.
Used to, yes. So that means that my buddies are reading
some of your
They should just
backdoors
be
have been
forwarding
closed.
it to you. That's totally legal,
I'll just ask my buddies to forward it to me. Yeah. No, that doesn't actually happen.
Oh, I'm sure.
NSA people, believe it or not, have much better things to do than try to read any random person's email. And I speak from experience. All right, we got that done. We got the Patreon done. Week in review. Looks like Josh is up first.
What, you talked about Patreon?
We did.
Already?
We talked
Was
about,
not paying attention?
we talked about the Patreon.
That's nice.
You will pay attention now.
Patreon.com/PCPer. There's one more plug.
I think that's
become a patron
of Patreon.
Of Patreon of PC Pro on Patreon.
Okay.
So Josh, you're up. AMD.
Me, you're up.
AMD stuff. What
Major
review?
continent. Europe.
What? Oh, yes.
Yes.
Major and continent.
That too.
What do you got for us, Josh?
Been drinking some beer.
No.
I
On the
wish I had
site.
more.
On the site. The review.
No.
You wrote a thing.
How can one talk about tech without a little lube? You know what I'm saying?
Beer is sufficient tech lube. Yes, I agree.
Yes, and so is that fine Kentucky jelly.
It's true. Very true.
Yeah, anyway. I had the chance to review 2 APUs from AMD. These are based on the new Godavari core, which is an improvement over Godavari from last year. Godavari is a slightly optimized architecture. It has not changed anything in a dramatic fashion, but what it has done of the same essential performance for a lower TDP. So I had the 7860K, the A10 7860K, as well as the A8 7670K. Now these are 2 kind of higher end APUs that they have. The 7860K is interesting in that it runs from 3.6 gigahertz up to 3.9 and 4.0, depending on the motherboard. But instead of, say, like the Godavari 7850, one of the first ones that we saw, that was running at 3.6 gigahertz to 3.9, that was a 95 watt TDP part. The 7860K, based on Godavari, essentially covers the same speeds in both CPU and a little higher GPU speed, but at a 65 watt TDP. So I was able to test this one as well as the 7670K, which is, again, a 3.6 to 3.9 gigahertz product. It's 95 watts TDP, but it only has, I think, 6 compute units, graphics compute units.
Down from 8, right?
So it's down from 8. So you've got 10 total when, AMD counts the 4 CPUs and then the 6 GPUs. But it's running at that same amount. It's got a little higher GPU clock, I think at 820, somewhere around there. So these are 2 products, I think $115 for the 7860K and around $105 for the 7670K. So I tested these against the original 7850K, the original Godavari, released 1.5 years ago, I think. Or, I can't even remember anymore. And compared them against the i3 4330, which is a Haswell-based part on the Z87 motherboard, as well as the i3 6100, which is the new Skylake performing part based on the Skylake architecture and using for 2400 memory and a Z170 based motherboard. So we have kind of an interesting combination here of slower but still being sold Haswell parts, the brand new Skylake, as well as Godavari and Godavari. And all of these guys are in between $100 and I think the i3 6100 is $126. So it's not hugely expensive, but it kind of depends on what motherboard and memory you get with it. But with memory right now, it's insane. You can get 16 gigs for $60, whether it be DDR3 fast stuff, 1866 and above, or DDR4, which these modules that I used were 2400 megahertz. Anyway, the AMD parts had some interesting issues when it came to CPU performance, and I was kind of surprised by how much of a difference in overall CPU performance we saw from the 4330, which runs at 3.5 gigahertz, and is Haswell again, not even Devil's Lake, or what, Devil's
Canyon.
Set up Devil's what?
Canyon.
Devil's Canyon, yes. And then the Skylake, which is the i3 6100. The difference between the 4330 and the 6100 was significant in CPU. It was impressive. Faster that CPU ran in pretty much everything.
Yep.
Certainly you did get a little bit of a hiccup when it came to utilizing all 4 cores, because it's a dual core hyper-threaded solution, and AMD is a 2 module with 2 cores per module. Even though they share an FPU, they can still do a lot of integer type work where it's more of a full 4-thread product. So when you started going into applications that will actually utilize all 4 threads, the Godavari and Godavari parts all perform pretty well with the 4330. So using 3 and 4 threads, they were very, very competitive with what Intel had to offer, but the 6100 was a pretty good chunk above. And you would especially see that with like Cinebench and others that are really heavily multi-threaded. Soft has some interesting results there that they're showing off. So what we're trying to get at is when you're talking single thread performance, Intel has them beat. We can look at the Cinebench 15 single thread. We can see 93 Cinebench units for the 7850, which is the highest of the AMD group of these 3 chips that I tested. And we can see the Haswell scores 139, and the Sandy Lake, we'll say, damn it, not Sandy
Bridge.
Skylake.
Oh.
Goes up to 157. I mean, it's a big chunk higher than what Haswell was able to do. I mean, Intel has done a lot of interesting work. When we go to the multi-thread test, we can see that AMD is a little bit more competitive with the 4330, but it still gets outclassed by Skylake. I mean, that's just an impressive architecture. But you are paying less for kind of across the board in terms of motherboards and supporting architecture than you are with Skylake. I mean, it's not much. If you were to take a high end, okay, let's just say this: the highest end FM Plus board is the Asus Cross Ranger. Wonderful name. Anyway, that's $149. The top end Z170 is about $300, I think. I mean, it's up there.
Okay.
But you can still get inexpensive Z170s for about the $90 price range. You can get A88Xs for about $10 less. So it's a big juggle of features and performance, but you can usually hit a little bit better sweet spot in AMD. But at the same time, you're going to get some really interesting technology from the Intel side. Usually they have built-in 3.1. They've got M.2. A lot of the FM2 Plus boards don't have these. What were you going to say, Ken?
No, that was pretty much what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it looks like once you get into the GPU stuff, though.
Once into the GPU things, the tables turn. AMD has the better graphics part. Now, Skylake has improved things. Now, with the GPU, we see the half float shaders and the single float for AMD. It's the same amount. So obviously, we're not seeing support for the half precision that we see in some of the higher cards and what NVIDIA is really pushing with the deep learning type aspects. We look at the 4330, which is the HD 4600 graphics from Intel, and we can see that it doesn't support half precision. We look at Skylake, and suddenly they've got that support there. And so the performance of that matches the 7670, which is an 8 GPU compute unit. It's very, very well. And not only is it very close, but it exceeds it. Once we go into just what I think it's
single precision.
Gosh, 32-bit floating point FP32.
Oh,
then AMD has a significant advantage across the board, and that extends onto double float, FP64, and then their quad shaders, which I don't know if many people really kind of use because it doesn't work real well, as we can see by these numbers.
Yeah.
So Intel has improved their graphics, but overall, in GPU, AMD still has a lead. It would be nice if their next generation stuff, Bristol Ridge, handles the partial stuff. That would be really great because it would be handy for certain kind of workloads. Memory bandwidth, AMD's sitting around 14 gigabytes per second. Intel, they're just blowing them out of the water with in between 22 and 25 gigs. Now, when we look at gaming, we can look at Firestrike, Dirt Rally, doesn't matter. The results are pretty consistent here. When you want to do any kind of graphics work, whether it's a basic 3D application, it's a game, it could be a MOBA that are so damn popular now, AMD just is outclassing the HD 4600 and the HD 530, which is not only on the i3 6100, but it is also the integrated graphics of the i7 6700K. It's only when you go back into Broadwell that they have the not the E series, but the Iris graphics. Do we see them matching and kind of exceeding AMD in some of these applications? But if you look at Dirt Rally, now Dirt Rally's it's a year old now. It was early access in April. It was officially released in December, and now it's a solid DX11 game. They've really tweaked the Ego engine, so it looks nice. It's got great physics, all these other really wonderful things about it. And we set it to 1080p with medium sets and ran the benchmark. AMD stuff ran, for the most part, above 30 frames per second. It was easy to watch. The Intel stuff, it just choked.
Yeah, it's basically half. Like AMD is basically twice the graphics performance of Intel.
I mean, it's a significant difference in actual usability and ability, and it's something that Intel has not gotten there yet. I mean, if the 6100 is still $10 more than the 7860, it's on par with the 7870K, which is faster still than the 7860. So I mean, if you are buying this for somebody that that doesn't do like video encoding, doesn't care about really super strong per thread performance. I mean, they're running internet applications, they're running Word, they're not going to notice a difference in most usability cases, but they're going to notice a huge difference if they go into any kind of 3D graphics. And this is where AMD really kind of excels and does well in price per dollar with their APUs, and they are still a significant factor in here if anybody wants to do anything kind of fun that involves 3D graphics. So this is the one that AMD Allyn, they've continually put their latest generation of graphics technologies in their APUs, and they've kept that up to date over a couple of years, and they've had really good results for integrated graphics, and they continued to have stayed ahead of Intel pretty much at every price point. So that's positive. But again, you're giving up single core. Overall quad core performance is not great, but it's competitive, and the price is competitive, and you get really good, well-supported graphics as compared to what you have with Intel, because Intel still has some significant driver problems when it comes to new applications out there. And that's something to keep in mind if you buy your aunt, uncle, mother, father, whatever, a low-cost APU setup. They're going to be able to play pretty much everything and have good driver support from AMD. So that's good. Power and overclocking. This is kind of interesting because, again, the 7860K, the Godavari part, is a 65-watt TDP. And if we look at the power and overclocking setup, we know that at idle, everybody's kind of the same except for Skylake. They're significantly lower than pretty much everybody else. That's the load graph. So if you scroll up and go to idle, you can see everybody's pretty much the same except for Skylake. That's kind of impressive how they've cut that many watts out. But the Godavari 7670 and 7860 are, again, lower than the 7850, and this is all on the same motherboard. Then when we go into load and scroll down, we'll see some interesting results. The 7860K is about on par with 7850K. It's a little bit slower. I believe that APU tends to throttle a little bit more, so it doesn't stay at a higher speed for longer than the older 7850K. But when we look at performance versus how much wattage you save, which is 16 watts in this example, that's a fairly significant improvement when you consider that they are not changing the process technology. It's just design, it's software, and it's how AMD controls turning on and off portions of the APU as needed, quickly doing that, and being able to reach that same kind of performance while knocking off 16 watts of power at the wall. But then we look at Haswell, which is faster in Cinebench, which is what I use to test the load, and it's 73 watts. And it's even worse when we look at the 6100, which is much more powerful in Cinebench in both single and multi-thread, and is pulling over only 63 watts. So until AMD gets a better process technology available to them on APUs, or with Bristol Ridge, with the excavator cores and the more extreme kind of optimization that they've done there, we're not going to see them get on a more level playing field with Intel. So overall, Godavari is a nice refresh. It's something that AMD needed. It's something the OEMs that support AMD need. It refreshes their line, gives them new products. The top end 7890, I believe, is like a 4.1 gigahertz to 4.3 gigahertz product, still running in that 95 watt TDP, plus the GPU, I believe, is running at 850 megahertz. So it's a much faster part overall. I mean, we're talking about 15 to 20% performance in any kind of 3D graphics and compute, stuff like that. It's a big jump. So Godavari is the 7670 is fast on CPU, but of course, because you've got 2 less GPU units, you're going to kind of fall behind a bit in graphics, but it's not that bad. But it's also, I think, $15 lower than the current 7860. So that's a positive. It's so compressed down there. You're going to have to mix and match, figure out what's important to you, and you can make a decision. So far, AMD doesn't have a bad choice in there. Certainly, if you were going to add an external graphics, well, not external, but a standard graphics card, and you want to do it for gaming, you want to look at Intel. But if you're going to have that APU do everything, it's going to do perfectly fine. It's going to excel at graphics. It's going to do fine in CPU, and so it's a solid release by AMD.
All right, cool.
Was that long enough? My throat's kind of raw.
Yeah. Yes,
okay.
Yes, it was. All right. Next up, Maury took a look at a ECS Z170 Claymore motherboard.
Thankfully, pointed the right end away from his face.
Yes, you wouldn't want a Claymore going off in your face. Pretty cool looking motherboard. Black on black kind of color scheme there. Let's see. I mean, most of these motherboard reviews are pretty much the same at this point.
Yep. Well, this one did have a couple of tweaks.
Yeah, I know that he saw an issue with, well...
Yes, keep scrolling down.
I know. He goes
there's
overkill.
One of them.
He goes overkill on the... Well, I think that...
Oh, no. Keep going.
That one fit.
No, it didn't.
Well, it cleared
Keep
the RAM.
scrolling.
It cleared the RAM. What it did not clear was the GPU.
That is not fitting.
Yeah, so if you put a GPU in the first slot and you have kind of, you'd kind of consider that, isn't that 140 millimeter cooler? Isn't that the size of the fans on that cooler?
I don't think it's 140.
I guess 120.
Those are just 120s?
Yeah.
I think so.
Those seem pretty big. I don't know. But that's just like...
On the other hand, you got 5 16 by PCIe 3.0s, so it's not a deal breaker that you lose that first one.
Oh, that's true. Well, and I mean, I think a lot of people are probably going to have a cooler a little bit smaller than that, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. I noticed that there's a M.2 slot hiding down there right underneath the primary GPU slot. I actually like that.
Which is another reason not to use the primary GPU slot.
No, I like that. I like that idea. Because if it's any kind of blower or even the non-blower style, they're usually drawing air in from the bottom section. Right? Because those blowers, even if they're not drawing air in, if they're pushing air out, that warmer air out of the GPU, even if it's blowing directly on an M.2 SSD, if you're running the SSD full tilt, that warmer air is still going to cool it. Right? Because M.2 SSD with no heat sinks on it at all, drawing like 6 or 8 watts or something like that, that thing's going to heat up. It'll actually heat up hotter than the exhaust coming out of a GPU, even if the GPU was at full load. So it actually would still have a cooling effect, and it would be enough in just about every case I can think of to prevent it from throttling. So, it's good either way, in my opinion. And pretty much on the primary slot there, nobody's going to want to put a card right next to it, because chances are they're going to have a dual slot GPU sitting there. So, hey, if you can't use the space for anything else, you might as well stick an M.2 slot under there.
For that, it's reasonable.
Yeah, other than that, everything else looked like pretty much standard fare for motherboard review. Where is the CMOS battery? Gotta find it.
Oh, it's in between the PCIe slots. 2 and 3. Up on the front, you'll see it.
Well, if you use your giant cooler and have to put it in slot 2, then that's just a bad position.
It's okay.
It's where it needs to be, more or less.
Sure. The big question for me on any of these is just, like, does it have some other way to clear the CMOS without requiring removal of the battery? Like, does it have a jumper that actually that actually disconnects and then shorts out the power? Not shorting out the battery, but shorting out any capacitance left on the motherboard to make sure that the real-time clock and all the, volatile stuff just goes away.
So, yeah.
Is that a CMOS button?
I would almost be sure it has to have one.
I think pretty much they all have that, so you don't have to worry too much about the battery placement in reality. But
more I liked it because it's handy.
Yeah.
There is one thing you won't like about this board.
That is a super flat board. Do you notice how few components are on that damn thing?
Yeah, it's very barren. Which is, what was the verdict on this? Was it a kind of a low price board? Is that what's going on?
It's about 140. Decent for 170.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah, for C170, that's all right.
Yeah, not amazing, but not horrible, and it's got a nice feature set. But the one thing he did find was kind of flaky were the SATA controllers.
That's weird.
Port 2, he was getting well over 500 megs a second.
Okay.
Port 4, just over 400.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
It's a little weird.
Port 4.
And you know what? They got rid of the shield.
Oh,
I can't even
get rid of the shield.
I can't even think of anything within the chipset or like SATA interface itself that would go to that we could do 400
something. But yeah, and he tested it a couple of times.
I also saw as you're scrolling past, it's only by 2 M.2 slots. So that's
that's also true.
You sure he wasn't talking about? Hold on, SATA port 4 performing considerably slower than with the same drive attached to the SATA port 2.
Yep.
Huh.
It's send it to you.
That's got to be
to the bottom of this.
It's got to be something, probably firmware. I would hope firmware correctable for this board's sake, because that's just not something you hear happens with like SATA ports on, at least on Intel boards. They either go the full speed or they fall back to 3 gigabit, which would give you 250 not like, 400. That's like in between both speed grades, which is just not something that is a SATA
It's a bit weird.
Yeah. Weird stuff. All right, well.
If you like weird stuff, go read Maury's review of the ECSC 170 Claymore.
Yeah, it's definitely got weird stuff in it. All right, moving on. So Ryan, who is now out of the office, which is why we're covering for him, doing some family stuff. Before he went to said family stuff, pretty much pulled like 2 all-nighters in the office and tried to do frame rating with a new set of games on like a selection of different GPUs to include the Radeon Pro Duo. Because we managed to get our hands on one, and he wanted to do some testing. So he did some testing. He did some testing.
Just some background. Radeon Pro Duo is essentially 2x-nanos put together on a single PCB. So it means it's 3X, fully enabled chips, but they're running at the lower speed, lower TDP. They're connected via a PLX chip. And in theory, you should get really good inter-GPU communication because there's one hop in between when you're doing XDMA, if I understand this correctly. And unfortunately, AMD still has some crossfire issues. Now, they had promised this card quite a while ago, probably about a year, 9 months, and it just never materialized. We saw PCBs and mock-ups of them. We thought, well, this looks like it's a product that is about to be released, but it just kind of kept put back, and we weren't entirely sure why. Didn't have a whole lot of communication with AMD as to the reason behind this, even though the Fury X and Fury and the Nanos were selling well. They seem to be keeping the market nicely saturated with them at the price points that they're offering, so there weren't any extreme shortages. But we were kept promising this dual GPU part based on the Fury GPU. Finally, we received the announcements that they were going to offer this, the Radeon Pro Duo, and it was more of a professional card of people who will be working on VR as well as GPU stuff that can utilize that power, and they're going to sell it for $1,499, or Johnny Shee would be extremely happy. $1,499. Thank you.
So the negative there is that is the cost of 3 nanos.
That is essentially the cost of 3 nanos, because a nano right now is about $500, right?
Yeah.
If not a little bit lower on sale.
Yeah, it does save you some space. Don't get me wrong. You're putting, and
you do, and you get the nice water cooler.
Yep.
You got the nice dissipation.
Yep.
All those things are fantastic. But we have a series of problems. Now, we had a limited amount of time to be able to get this out before Ryan, obviously took time for vacation, which I totally understand.
Yeah, he wasn't able to do the full round of games that he intended to be the new full round of games.
Yeah, And unfortunately, I had some problems with the areas that AMD is really pushing. One, DX12. Measuring the games is really, I hate to sound like a current social justice warrior, but it's problematic.
Yeah.
Because Fraps does not work accurately. A lot of the built-in benchmarks do not work accurately.
PresentMon,
they do not fully
work.
Represent what you're seeing on the screen with the numbers that they're providing you. And this kind of is across the board with the DX12 games, because the tools have not caught up to the products that are currently being released. Now, I think we've got Quantum Break and Ashes of the Singularity.
Yep.
Tomb Raider has a DX12.
And Gears of War Ultimate Edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we all know how well Gears of War Ultimate Edition runs.
Well, we all know how well Quantum Break runs.
What's that?
Quantum Break as well.
Didn't Quantum Break just get like a 27 gig patch to try to fix a bunch of stuff?
It did. I didn't see if it actually fixed it or not.
They said they changed. They got rid of the film grain and all the other kind of like stuff that was put in there. And so there's also this PresentMon thing, which we've been like behind the scenes, working back and forth with Microsoft trying to get, because initially like PresentMon was working more just like fraps. So it wasn't giving us, PresentMon is supposed to be able to be a thing that could give you actual frame rating style results of DX12 stuff, but is not there yet. Like the numbers we get from that are not the equivalent of frame rating data. So basically, we're just not including DX12 stuff yet because A, there's not a lot of titles for it, and B, we can't frame rate it. And if we can't,
it's broke, yo.
Yeah, well, it's not that it's broke. We can't frame rate it, so we can't tell you if there's runt frames, weird stuff going on with frames, any of that. In other words, we can't have those results be the same standard as all of the reviews we've been doing for years. So,
and another complaint that we had is, why didn't you include any VR games? This is being marketed as a VR developer card. Why aren't we doing this? I mean, why can't you do one GPU per eye and get really outstanding performance? Well, that one
you
GPU
burn your
per
eyelids
eye,
when you do that.
What's that?
You burn your eyelids when you do that. You're not supposed to put your eyes right up to the card.
You shoot your eyes out, kids.
Not good.
Watt TDP, you press that damn thing to your eyes and it just instantly sears it all. It's just terrible. Terrible.
But the things you see for that second.
Yeah.
So that's not something. I mean, neither side can do that.
No, I mean, this Liquid VR promises it, but it has not implemented yet.
Yep.
NVIDIA, I think they're kind of promising that idea as well, but again, the implementation is well behind what people are actually putting out now for the Oculus and the Vive. Vive?
Vive.
Can never remember. There are just things in the present and setup that dual GPU, one per eye, it doesn't work yet. It's not saying it's not going to in the future. I think it will, but there are some significant software hurdles, not only from the API, but also from the game engine. So this is another reason why, well, it's part of the reason why we haven't done VR. The other reason is that the little software magic that Oculus at least puts in, where if it doesn't receive a frame with the movement of the person, it will take the same frame and shift it over. So you've got a strange presentation of frames that does not accurately represent the output of the GPU. It's actually done kind of in software rather than rendering to shift a frame. So it's kind of a cheat.
You essentially get a continuous 90 frames per second regardless of if the game rendering engine is going slower.
Exactly. So how exactly are you going to report that? It's like, oh yeah, this GPU is doing great. It's providing this, but in fact, it's really not.
Yeah.
Let's say we compare, this part versus something else in the future that's doing a true 90 frames per second and can do it comfortably. But, we compare it to this older part and people say, oh, well, this, the old thing can do just as fine and it's perfectly fine. And we, why buy the new?
Yep.
Well, because the new one's actually more accurate. It's doing the work that you're pushing to it.
Yep.
It's not going through kind of a software hack to give you a false illusion of movement and a change of frame, when in fact it's just shifting those pixels to 5, 10 pixels to right or left, and giving you a new frame present.
Yep.
So overall, this card performed about how we expected. I mean, it's about 2 nanos worth of crossfire.
Yeah, if you look at the results, it's literally like 2 nanos. Like it's either the black and the green lines on that chart
very
there.
Close. The 2 nanos will probably go a little bit faster because they're not throttling as much. I mean, it's not a huge difference.
It's so
but
close.
It is measurable.
It's so close. It's basically, at least in Fallout 4, it's basically the same line.
Yeah.
There were some other variants we saw with different games, like Fallout. The crossfire was reasonably well. You could tell there was a little more variance in the frame times on the Pro Duo, but I mean that could just be like driver tweaking stuff moving forward. Honestly, that could correct that. There were some. So here's a valid reason for frame rating.
Yeah,
right here.
that's a great way to show it.
So, and this is something that did not apply to the the Pro Duo at all. It wasn't an issue with the Pro Duo, but it was something that we noticed on the R9 295X2, and it was this really weird out of order thing. So this was the side of a building, and we can't really. We could have put video in it, but it's much easier to see just in this still frame. But basically, that kind of tear, that weird tear, which was actually an out of time frame.
Yeah, because that's supposed to be teal, blue, green.
Yeah, it's supposed to cycle
blue,
through.
teal.
Like if you have a tear of something that's motion, in this case, those posts in that front of that porch were moving from right to left. If anything, they should have just been staggered. It should have just been like a zigzag, not a one of them is in the past versus the two, or one of them is in the, one of them's in the future versus the top and bottom that are in the past. Like that was weird. It's like it just decided to draw kind of newer in the middle, and it was really, really disturbing if you just watched it. Like he was just, he was just like holding forward to walk through the scene, and I was just like, whoa, what was that? And we went back and looked at the results, and sure enough, it was actually throwing errors that we don't normally look for in like the frame rating results, and we had to like go back and step through this and then go and recheck all the other cards just to make sure that none of them were throwing that same kind of error, and they weren't. So we actually discovered an issue that card had with Fallout that we might have actually missed even the first time we reviewed it, which maybe Fallout wasn't out then. I'm not sure.
What definitely was not.
Yeah. So this is the kind of stuff that like you have to test it this way. Like Fraps wouldn't pick this up. It would just, it would basically just give you
more.
Yeah. So
and it'd say the frames went up.
Yeah. It would just, it was actually like the frame rating data. If you ignored those weird frames, which is what the percentile results show, just ignoring that, you got the results that we got here. So it didn't do anything just really crazy, as long as you were ignoring that really annoying visual artifact.
Yeah.
And also something else for just like, you can't frame rate VR yet. You can't use Fraps. You don't know if Fraps is capturing what's going to the headset or what's going to, what's the name of the screen that gets put on the regular display for you to, it's a viewport or something?
Yeah, we'll call it
It's
that.
just like, there's kind of a screen that other people can look at the computer display and see what the person in VR is actually seeing. Sometimes that's not necessarily it's not the same
It's not
scene.
representative.
Very rarely is it the
Very
same.
rarely is it exactly what's being seen by either eye. Sometimes it happens to be like the scene drawn in one eye, but missing some of the overlay stuff.
Sometimes it's just a completely different camera.
Yeah, sometimes it's a different camera. There's some games where you can actually, like
Job Simulator.
You can actually, within the VR space, you can grab the camera, which is the point of view being displayed on the screen, and move it around the space. So there's actually a third eye, so to speak, being drawn in a completely different place. So it's like, it is a nightmare to try to capture, and even that is operating at a different frame rate, potentially, than what the VR headset is doing. So, yeah, it's just, the VR stuff is coming along, and all I can say is so are the tools to try to even evaluate it at all. And
Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare.
And we can't, like, it's not even close enough to something where we can accurately review it, and especially do, like, comparisons from one card to another with something that's such a moving target right now. All right, so let's see.
I'd say within the next 5 months, we're going to start seeing the tools needed to do an adequate job for at least DX12. I'm not sure how we're going to get around some of these VR issues.
Yep.
Just because they've got so much stuff working in the background against getting solid numbers for these products. So bear with us. We're doing the best we can, but overall, it's a good performing card. It's nano crossfire.
Yep.
And it's got the negative of crossfire. Crossfire, as implemented now, does not have as widespread support as SLI. And I know a lot of people may be mad at that. Crossfire has improved, especially with the XDMA stuff and the latest generations of products. There have been big jumps. AMD is paying far more attention to this than they did in the past. And as reviewers, we need to expose the weaknesses. So as consumers, you know what the issues are, and the company knows what the issues are, and the company can work to fix these things so you as consumers can get a better product. So I know that we often get accused of bias and being paid off, but when we hit issues like this, it is of extreme importance for us to talk to you about it, to expose it, and say, you know what, you may be getting sold a bill of goods that is not entirely accurate. But you know what? We work with these guys. We know these guys. They're passionate about graphics. They're passionate about their products. They want to improve what you get, and they want to make money. Essentially, they want to keep their jobs, and they want to sell more, and they want to have something that not only is competitive, but is above the competition.
Yep.
And this is part of that. We need to know what the limitations are, and the company needs to know, because remember back in the days when Scott Wasson came out and said, hey, the 7950 has some real problems, even just using the fraps of frame time. And I know Ryan was doing some in-depth digging at this time, but he didn't have a good way to show it, but Scott did with fraps.
Yep.
And AMD went into that. They worked with it, and they improved the situation dramatically. And this is what we're here for consumers, not the graphics guys, not CPU guys. And so we try to give the information that we have. But overall, $1,500 for this is just too much for average gamers and consumers, and we kind of knew that. AMD knew that. They
but if
are
you're a
marketing
developer,
this towards the professional.
If you're a developer or a professional that has to sell somebody on buying one GPU or two GPUs, like separate cards, right?
Oh no, if you're literally a developer.
Yeah.
If you're using the Pro driver, this thing is probably brilliant. None of us are really big on rendering. We don't really have those jobs or that skill set, so we can't test the professional side of this card. But I have a feeling professionally this card is actually going to be pretty good.
Yep.
Trying to market it as a gamer card is silly.
Some people asked us why didn't we test with the Pro driver? We actually asked AMD. Said, hey, we have a Pro Duo. You didn't send it to us, but we got one. Like, what driver should we use? And they said, no, just use the regular driver. So, that was on their recommendation. And I think for gaming, there probably wouldn't have been a difference anyway.
I bet for gaming, there would have been a difference because the Pro driver doesn't have gaming optimizations
it just wouldn't. Oh,
it would have been
like they're not doing shader replacement and stuff in the Pro driver because why would they?
So it'd probably
be a completely different package.
So it'd be like worse, or it just wouldn't work.
It probably would be worse.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, there you
really ain't what the card's designed for, I don't think.
Yeah.
So you're better off with 2 nanos. Leave the Pro alone, and let the people, universities, developers, whoever, utilize them for what it's kind of aimed at from AMD, because $1,500 is an awful lot to pay with something that has essentially 4 gigs of space, memory space, and you can compare that to the 980 Ti, which has 6 gigs, or it's a 6 gauge, whether it's in SLI or single.
Yeah.
Or
so gaming wise, what's that?
Or 2 390Xs with 8 gigs.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
again, probably a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
That is a solid,
not much, but a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tried and true.
So one last thing before we move on. Yes, there were gripes that the number of titles tested looked like they were favoring NVIDIA, because I think they were all GameWorks titles. And I will tell you this, and even
really,
Ken's,
Tomb Raider's a GameWorks title?
Even Ken's like, well, it's just, I don't think there were any, AMD specific titles.
Tomb Raider ain't an AMD specific one?
I don't remember which way this one fell.
I don't remember which way that one falls. But here's the thing. Ryan literally had a list of, here's the new round of games that I want to test. He did not put all of them in this piece. He just ran out of time. He needed to go out of town, and he had to try to write the article and record the video and all that stuff. So he just ran out of testing time. And I know that Hitman is on his list, and I'm pretty sure that's an AMD.
If only Dirt Rally was there.
And, well, I don't know. Well,
Yeah, but that's like DX5. Come on, you
No,
need
it's not. It's
DX18 at least.
DX11, and it's an AMD product. Well,
Well,
whatever.
I will say
An AMD
probably
product.
after the attention
No,
that we
it's
saw,
still
after the comments that we saw, he might even like throw Dirt Rally in there. I would guess if it's easy enough to test and just include it.
Yeah.
We have a strong heritage of testing dirt and grid games.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
So
we should probably continue
there
that.
you go. We'll probably have that one in there too. I know Hitman is one that he had mentioned, but it just didn't end up in there. I mean, I think there's even like another game that ended up not in there just because he ran out of time. I know it looks bad because of where he chose to stop in the list and the fact that we didn't hit like the AMD titles yet. But I assure you, like it wasn't like, you know, evil snickering at PC Per. How can we stick it to AMD? Like let's just test GameWorks stuff or something.
And I
like
mean,
that.
it's difficult to we tested popular games that people are playing.
That's exactly what he did. Like he literally sat there.
We didn't
and
go
went,
down
okay.
the GameWorks list and go down the AMD list
Right.
and pick we just picked popular games.
And that's the other part of it. Like the GameWorks or AMD or Nvidia, like it wasn't even part of the conversation. Like when he was figuring out the games, he was just going through, like he was just sitting right there going like, all right, what games should I do on new games? And he basically like went on Steam and he just like listed by popularity and just like looked at stuff, right? Trying to get, you know, a good representation.
But I mean, the long and short of it
Yeah.
is it's expensive for what you get if you are just doing games.
Yes.
If you're a university or a developer, you can afford to do this. It is inexpensive for a pro type card. And, you know, if you're in that, then get it. It's
Yeah.
$1,500 as compared to $6,000 and
But
plus
if you're-
for other models.
But if you're
Exactly.
but if you're not and you're just gaming, just get a second Nano.
Yeah.
Like or
Get 2 Nanos.
or like Ryan said in the end of the video, or better yet, just wait.
yeah.
Right? Because there's stuff coming from both sides.
Have you been reading the internet?
Yeah.
Wait a couple
There's
months.
stuff coming from both sides.
Wait,
This card-
wait some weeks.
This card came out really, really late. It's silly to buy it, especially at that price, considering how late it was out and the fact that there's new stuff coming out soon that's probably going to slaughter this card even, I would imagine. You know.
new process nodes, exciting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, well,
it's going to be.
I'm not
it's gonna
saying
be some
single
interesting give and take
GPU.
there.
I'm not saying the next single GPU card is going to beat this dual GPU card, but like it's going to be faster for a single GPU and like faster than
And
a
not only
Nano.
that, but it's going to be seriously more power efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Serious.
So then you can do two.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, you could do two.
And who
And
knows? Maybe somebody will develop more technology in the chip to have better inter-chip communications between two GPUs.
also true. And maybe they might even tweak some Crossfire stuff a little bit further, like so that the frame times even look better. Because there were a few games in this
Exactly.
review where we saw the Nanos and the Pro Duo do some weird frame timing stuff, like Grand Theft Auto at 4K. And
But it ain't the card, kids. It's the game.
Pro Duo did some really. There were a couple of places where the Pro Duo looked really bad compared to the Para Nanos, even.
And
but I think it's
as
just software.
One last thing to talk about. Because we've got to go on.
Okay,
Yeah.
go
This
ahead.
is going insane. Something to consider with DX12 titles. The majority of performance optimization is going to fall on the developer's shoulders rather than Microsoft and their DX12 API. So if they want
What? It's
really
not a
good
magic
performance,
wand that fixes everything?
it is not a magic wand. It actually, developers are like, this kind of sucks, because if they want multi-GPU, they've got to do some really interesting things on their side to get it to work.
Yep.
Microsoft is like, oh yeah, we can do that. And I mean, we've got these pathways. The API can handle it. But you know what? You're going to have to do a lot of the work. And this is the price of having a, you know, kind of close to the metal API, is if you want the advantages of these things, you're going to do the work. So it is, yeah, it's not a magic wand. It's not a silver bullet. There's going to be a couple of really interesting years of development and learning before DX12 really comes to fruition. And this kind of leaves, just as a side note, an interesting gap for Vulkan to come in and possibly take advantage of. But they've got to sell developers on that as well.
Yep.
So anyway, that's the Radeon Pro Duo. It's an interesting card. It's expensive. If you're a gamer, save your money, do something else. If you're a developer who's actually going to utilize that kind of power in a one card implementation, then knock yourself out, because $1,500 is a bargain when you come to Pro cards.
Yeah.
All right. So, enough of that stuff. Talking about enough GPUs. On to some storage stuff. So, I'm a big fan of those 5.25-inch bay hot swap, like front panel hot swap things, where you can just swap in SATA SSDs at will, right? Real easy. Don't have to open up your case to get to the SATA SSDs. And I, even though it's as silly as it might sound, I still use SATA like in my home system. I'm still using SATA in the office system here. Like all the M.2 samples that we have here, they are not plugged into anything right now. They're just sitting on my desk. Anyway, that's not to say that they're, slower by any means. The system is noticeably more snappy. It's just that I just personally don't need to go that fast quite yet, I guess. I'm not really loading them down that badly. Especially since I'm just like writing articles and using Google on most of my machines these days anyway. If I get back into like hardcore gaming and stuff like that, maybe I'll have to upgrade to M.2 myself. However, since I kind of like this hot swap stuff, Icy Dock caught my eye with a couple of ToughArmor. One of them's a brand new release. The other one's been out for a few months. Icy Dock ToughArmor. These are a mouthful. MB998SP-B for black. So the 99 is like a series, and then 8 means it is 8 bays. And then there's another one that is a 993 SK, which is a slightly different drive tray that's used in it. And that's a 3-bay hot swap. So basically what you're looking at is a 5.25-inch bay that can do hot swap of 8 2.5-inch SATA SSDs, or if you prefer, a 3.5-inch bay that can do a hot swap of 3. And that's like basically the amount of space it takes if you just stacked 3 of those SSDs just on top of each other, right? So the trays are like extremely thin, especially in the 3.5-inch model. They are, even though they look the same or similar from the front there, they are actually different trays between these two models. There are some models that you can do cross-compatibility with the same kind of a tray along the Icy Dock line, but just not these two specifically mixed together. But let's see, I'll just go right to this part right here. Installation and testing. So they come with these label things that you can stick on the front of each tray or drawer or hot swap bay, whatever you want to call it. Even though the 3.5-inch model only comes with 3 trays in it, it comes with the full tree of like 8, numbers 1 through 8. So if you had a few of these, or if they were in a server and you just wanted to have like spares or spare trays or something like that, just numbered differently, you can just have that taken care of. If you look at the rear, they're all just individual SATA connections. The 5.25 model has a pair of SATA power connectors. It also has Jeremy's dreaded 40mm fans. Pair of those at the back. No, that's the thing. They're only like, I think they only spin at like 5,000 RPM. They're basically inaudible. They're very quiet.
You just spent too much time on a submarine. You can't hear it anymore.
No. They just don't have any kind of real whine to them. It's more of an air sound than a fan whine. But that said, if you're putting SSDs in there that are not really drawing a lot of power and your case is fairly open and you already have other airflow going on, they left the fans connected just through standard fan connectors at the back. So you could just yank the connectors, and if you really wanted to get ambitious, you could probably just unscrew the fans and just remove them. So, I mean, that's just an option for if you really wanted to do that. I did have kind of a gripe with 3.5-inch model because it has 3 SATA data connectors, 1 for each drive. But then they went with a 4-pin floppy style power connector.
Really?
Even though there is a lot of room, because look at that, there is a lot of room back there. They could have just put a horizontal SATA power connector back there. I don't understand why they didn't.
No one should use floppy power connectors, and no one should use Molex connectors anymore.
Yeah.
Just make everything SATA power and make me not have to plug something else into my modular power supply.
Molex I can kind of give someone a pass.
Molex is just a bad connector that breaks eventually.
I know. It's just you just shouldn't use that anymore, but at least that's easy to find. Like, here's the example. The power supply that I had on the storage test bed, which is kind of a recent power supply, it was modular, had a bunch of cables in the box. Not one of them had a 4-pin floppy connector.
Because why would it?
Exactly. I think maybe they were going more for like servers, because right, Jeremy, like a 2U server would probably still have a floppy connector in it, right?
Well, would it be there? It probably wouldn't be used.
It wouldn't be used.
Be there.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it would be there, right?
Just in case.
Yeah.
There are times where, shit, this is the only thing I got. Let's go for it.
Yeah, so just be mindful of that. If you're going for the 3-bay, 3.5-inch unit for a
buy
desktop
an adapter
system,
when you order it.
Yeah, just make sure you have the adapter. Just something to be aware of. They did not include an adapter in the box. But all of that aside, so you can just say, you can just see here's the hot swap trays. The ones for the 3.5-inch model actually have a air blocking, kind of piece in the back that you remove when you replace it with an SSD. And then the 5.25-inch model doesn't need to do that just because the trays are designed a little bit differently. But they basically, they give you all the screws. It is not screwless, unfortunately. The trays are they're so thin, and there's not even enough to them for them to have any kind of room for something that's going to clamp onto a drive just on its own. You really have to use those low-profile screws that come with it to make all this work.
Just make it a friction fit.
You almost could at this point. These things are so ridiculously thin as far as like where the drives are sliding into. And you have to use, I don't want to say low profile, but you have to use 7mm SSDs for both of these, which is pretty much what you get now if you get an SSD. That's the standard height. But if you have some older SSDs, not going to fit. And then this is just what they look like lit up. I just had something in bay 8 of one and bay 3 of the other one, and you basically get a green light for when the drive is installed, and then activity just gives you like a flash of that light. So pretty easy to tell you have drive activity, and also handy, right? It's individual drive activity, which is not something you would get just from your motherboard hard drive activity LED. There was a pretty impressive warranty on these guys for something that's a hardware project like this. 3-year warranty, pretty surprising for like a hot swap bay. But their whole
what is there to die?
Well, their whole shtick on this. Well, that's the thing. But usually that's an excuse for a shorter warranty.
Yeah.
Right. Like a computer case. What kind of warranty do you see on a computer case? Like, even though there's nothing to die, it's usually like a 1-year warranty or maybe even like a 90-day warranty. I don't think companies go crazy on warranties for that kind of stuff. This falls into that kind of category, yet it has a 3-year warranty. So, their advertisement and their whole thing on this is like, oh, it's super tough, and like they actually run it over with a car, like in their product pictures and stuff.
Of course they do.
And another review site actually ran it over with like an SUV, like one of these, and like no problem, didn't even bend it or anything. And so it's a really, nice design, steel construction, it's very durable. I don't know why you would need to bash the front of your computer that badly, but if you did, this would probably just kind of shrug it off. So the pricing is a little bit kind of server enterprisey. That 3-bay model is $65. The 8-bay model is $120. It's cheaper than I've seen even smaller number of bays in the same model with like even things that I've bought. Like I remember paying like $150 or $160 for like a 4-bay hot swap 5.25-inch thing, and this holds twice as many for less money. So, pretty decent. You could have got $15 off if you ordered this right when I posted the review back in April, but it's not April anymore. Sorry. So I gave these things editor's choice because if you have any need for hot swap in a front panel, like this would just be like the default way that I would go at this point. I even went back and tried to find comparison of some of the other hot swap bays that I'd used in the past, and a lot of those companies aren't even really making those things anymore, or it's just harder to find them. So it's almost like these guys are almost the only game in town. I know Supermicro does make some. There were some people in the comments that mentioned that, but when I was poking around there, their options were just not as flexible as what these are. And we've reviewed some of these other IC dock things in the past. They seem to make just about every kind of hot swap thing possible. They even make like a thing that's the form factor of a 3.5-inch drive with the ports in the correct place in the back and everything, but you open it up and you put a 2.5-inch drive in it, and that way you can like stick it into something that was a 3.5-inch hot swap, like a Drobo or like a servers or stuff like that. NASs, if you wanted to put a 2.5-inch SSD in a NAS without like a pair of needle nose pliers, try to fit it into the 3.5-inch bay. Anyway, so cool stuff. And I think that's it for the reviews. Is that it for the reviews?
Oh, dear Lord, thank God.
It's only been an hour.
It's only been an hour. 3 hours later. All right, news items. AMD news. That probably means Josh. So get ready for another hour.
No, it's Jeremy, isn't it? You write this up,
it's Jeremy. No, it's Scott.
No, Scott did.
Oh.
Scott.
Don't blame me.
Essentially, okay. AMD is a joint venture with, Natomo Fujitsu?
A Chinese company.
Nantong Fujitsu. Chinese company. Essentially, AMD is doing a joint venture with their packaging group. So essentially, they take dies, they attach it to substrates, they test them, and then they ship them out products.
Okay.
This is kind of limited if you're only just doing AMD parts right now, because they're not selling all that well. So, by doing this joint venture with this other group, they can expand to other customers. So not only will they do AMD products, but they will package others, and therefore maximizing the productivity of this company and their factory resources. So it's a good thing.
Okay.
AMD gets a chunk of change. They still get access to this packaging plant, but they also allow the plant itself to run at a more optimal efficiency by opening it up through this joint venture to other customers. So this has had a positive impact on their quarterly results. And anybody else have any?
It looks good for AMD to me. I mean, that's about all there is.
Certainly
to
helped
say.
their stock or their stock price.
Yeah, their stock jumped up like a lot.
Yeah.
On this very announcement, their stock took like a huge jump.
Yeah.
So it needed that.
Yeah, I've heard there's at least a little bit of a market over there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's very big or not, but I think there's a little bit of market there.
Tiny market.
Yeah.
Okay. What else we got? Antec P9 window full tower enclosure. So yeah, that's definitely a full tower. All right.
Apparently, Antec makes cases still.
Antec still makes cases. I like Antec cases.
For a while, Antec was kind of the premier U.S. case and power supply guy.
Yeah.
They had really good products that kind of fell off the map there, but now seems they're coming back up.
I always liked that what was it, the 900, the one with the huge fan on top? It's like a 200 millimeter fan on top.
They did that on quite a few cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the P180 was the holy grail of case, and it would still be a nice case.
It's still a damn good case.
Yeah. So I mean,
I'm sure Sebastian will get hands on with
looks
this.
like a nice case. Is that 8 3.5-inch drive bays?
Yeah, and you notice how you can see through the back there.
Yeah.
So there's a cutout.
Yeah, so you can get to so you can mount heatsink or whatever to your.
Well, and wire management for those drives is just insanely easy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah.
Like insanely easy.
Yeah, that's like an Allyn style case.
We're just cutting the whole thing out.
That is like an Allyn style case.
It looks a little generic, but it's entirely functional.
Yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, and 8 is a magic number as far as like, they do make 8 port RAID controllers.
And then it has the 3 5.25-inch bays, so you could put one of those icy dock type things in there.
You could put 3 of those icy dock type things.
Well, I was thinking about the ones for 3.5-inch drives.
Oh, okay.
If you wanted to go that way.
That's true. Yeah, they do make a.
So you could fit 5 more in there.
I think it's 4 or 5, depending on which way they're oriented. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can really go crazy with that case. There are other case. I forget who makes it. Somebody makes like a 12 3.5-inch. Like they're all just built in right in the front case. But anyway, this one looks good. How much is it?
$110.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
pretty cool.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see what Sebastian says.
It's like the wires come pre-managed, or at least the fan ones. Oh, it's got a fan controller in it, I guess.
Yep.
Huh.
Nice.
I like that.
Cool.
I like that they're just building the fan controllers in the cases these days. Everybody needs to do that. All right.
This next one, it's entirely Jeremy.
Oh, it's Jeremy.
Yeah,
You
this one was
reported
my
on it.
fault.
AMD.
Although, according to the commenters, it doesn't matter because there's not a single one of these monitors. It's like 78 by 32 display ratio. None of them are 16K. None can do below 1 hertz refresh rate or above 8,000. So obviously it's useless. But for the sane people on the planet, having a huge list of the FreeSync monitors from AMD, which now include the response ranges and the panel types, is really nice.
Yeah. Well,
So
the ranges
instead
are
of-
the ranges are necessary because they what was the name of that feature that did the frame doubling from AMD?
Frame rate compensation.
Yeah.
Compensation?
Low frame rate compensation.
low
I
frame
think.
rate compensation.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the thing.
If you click through that link to the AMD site, we can show the list and they say it there. I think it's low frame rate compensation.
Yeah, it's LFC, but I think it's low frame rate
There
compensation.
you go. Low frame rate compensation.
And
Yeah.
then if you scroll down to the list,
Yeah, scroll to monitors.
yeah,
I have to
monitors
click
tab.
on
Nope.
something?
There's that. Go down.
Yeah, you have to click on
Scroll down.
monitors.
There's the tab that says monitors.
Monitor products.
Where?
Monitors.
Products?
Monitors.
No, up.
Up.
Where are you going? Oh,
It's an orange.
Monitors.
okay.
Congratulations.
There's the list. It's a little hidden. All right.
So it's nice to see. I mean,
Oh, and they
quick
give you a
reference,
checkbox. Okay, this is what I was more concerned about because, like, my thing was, well, there is a multiple that you have to be within from the low to the high of the display
You've
in
got
question.
48 to 75. It's not going to do LFC worth a damn because
It can't double.
Yeah.
If you
It's double.
yeah, if you double 48, you get higher than 75. So it goes from too low out of the range to too high out of the range.
So
So
if you're doing 30 to 75, arguably useful.
I do like how they're just flat out open here, and they just gave you a checkbox. You don't even have to do the math. They're just like, can this monitor do LFC? Yes or no? Checkbox or no checkbox? I am a little disappointed to see that it's looking like around 50-50 here. Whoa,
Yeah.
why are there all these?
Well,
Oh, wow. There's more. There is way more of these displays that have a range that is not doubleable than I thought.
I like LG.
I think
Is
there's
a
a
good
lot of
chunk of
1080p
why.
displays.
Yeah, but wow, that's like, look at, there's an awful, I just thought it was some of those like ultra wides that had that funky range.
No, if you scroll off LG, it gets a little bit better. They just didn't do it for a lot of theirs, but
40
not a
to
great deal better.
75 is not horrible because you can
Oh.
adjust your image quality to hit in there nicely.
Oh, sure.
It's just when you get into these
I'm just disappointed because
really bounces down.
I'm just
That
disappointed
it's
because
going
I
to
was
have
like,
an issue.
my initial reaction to when LFC came out was like, oh, now FreeSync is like equivalent to G-Sync on most of the monitors. But now I'm scrolling through the list and it is not, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not
No,
as many
some
as
of
I
this
was
is out of
hoping.
date.
Sure.
Like they added this, but a lot of those monitors are like it's hard to say exactly where Thrax got the information from. Is it the FreeSync program? Is it from the display manufacturer themselves? Is it a best guess? Because I mean, some of them are out of date. It doesn't seem to apply to any of the new patches that we've got or to the panels which can be overclocked. So there's a little bit more information that can be put in, but just having this as a basic reference is wonderful.
Yeah, it is possible. I think even if you overclock, the LFC thing might actually work.
I think so. I
If
think
you can
that's the case.
overclock high enough to get double.
If you can or not underclock, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Because some monitors will go on either direction. If you can get
Yep,
that
a little bit
2.5x
lower.
ratio
Some of them both go
that they
both
want.
ways.
Because they want 2.5x for LFC. So if you can get that, I think it just kind of flips it on.
Yeah,
Starts doing it. So, you know.
and I mean,
It'll
a good
work
place
to
to
be done,
start.
but a wonderful start.
and sure, it's still, you can't get down to 1 frame per second with LFC, sure, because
But
it only
who
doubles.
cares?
It only doubles so
But
many times.
Holy cow!
But
Is this a great piece of reference?
Yep.
Yeah.
for
It's like a
anybody looking
decoder.
for
Oh yeah,
exactly.
yeah. No, that's good.
I wish we had this for G-Sync.
Yeah, it'd be nice if NVIDIA would do something like this, eh?
We should just put one together.
No. Remember what happened last time you built a decoder?
One?
Yeah, the SSD decoder. became a freaking mess.
Too unwieldy.
Look at how many displays are on this thing already. It's already unwieldy. And some of the information's already out of date from what some of the people were saying. So, all right. Well, either way, it's a step in the right direction. It's a good thing.
Good on right.
Hey, you know what? AMD, because they are in the underdog, they really are forced to be more consumer centric. And this is a positive. And hopefully we can see that expand into other areas.
Yeah. All right.
But moving on.
What's next? Jeremy, what's this about the Linux people leaving Windows or something?
Well, that was just a teaser. They're not actually going to Linux, but boy, did it annoy people in the comments. The big news, which a lot of people picked up on, is the first time in forever, Windows dipped below 90% of the market share. This is pretty damn big. This is a chink in what has been previously invulnerable armor. It gets even more fun when you actually dig into the actual numbers that market share put up. I had a good conversation with a guy over email about it and found out interesting things like last month. There was a huge chunk of Windows 3.1 machines that suddenly got started up.
That's pretty funny.
Lord only knows why.
Somebody turned on a bunch of old ATMs.
Or just a something. But the big thing is that 88 point a bit, 2.4, something like that, of the desktops running right now are running Windows OSs. Cumulative. That is ridiculous. Like, this is not something Microsoft has ever had to face before. They're going not necessarily towards Linux. Linux actually saw like a tiny little drop, but they had a big spike last month. Older OS X is seeing a little bit of a jump. So things that are not captured by this, because there are still people out there running some interesting little operating systems. Chrome is going to be a piece of that. Saw a big jump. They're almost 9% of the market. It's something we've never seen before. It's interesting to see if this is just a little blip or if this is something that we're going to keep going. But I encourage you, I linked to the Slashdot story, which then goes to the net market share link. And just looking at these numbers, like, it's a weird world out there in Microsoft. I actually really like to tell you this because I've had a bad day today. You boys better smarten up a bit because things aren't as golden as they used to be.
Shouldn't every
I'm gonna
PC
keep an eye on it.
Shouldn't every PC with the Windows 10 anniversary just count for a Linux install now?
Bash doesn't count.
It's got an Ubuntu. It's run like you can run.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's got it. But
You can just grep stuff and no, I don't know about that.
It's the
Well,
full
you can't grep.
Ubuntu subsystem running. It's not just Bash. Like you can run grep, you
it's
can
not
run
just
GCC,
Bash
you
sort
can
of
do
running on
Really?
top.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a chunk in it. It's impressive. I haven't had a chance to play with it.
yeah.
It's been insane around here, but I would
Anything-
like to just sort of screw around with it a
anything
bit.
that makes it
because
so I
that's just
don't-
going to amuse me.
Anything
The
that makes it
future
so I
is
don't have to
weird.
install Sigwin.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I just don't want to do that ever again. And if they can just
awful
make that
piece of
so I don't
software.
do that ever again, be so happy. All right. Well, to kind of transition off of that and into some more of the same thing, we'll just go straight to Jeremy's pick of the week.
Yeah, it's these guys with the amazing market share. Because
Yeah.
it was sort of like I had just visited an old friend that I hadn't seen for a long time, and he invited me to go have some dinner on him. And I opened the door, and all of a sudden the deal has changed because there's Microsoft sitting at the end of the table telling me, "Pray I do not change the deal any further."
And then you
So-
draw your weapon and shoot at it, and it deflects it and grabs
It
your
didn't
weapon.
work. It was depressing as hell, and thankfully I'm not frozen yet.
So wait, this happened back in November? I thought.
Yes and no, and sort of the other thing that annoyed the hell out of me. Essentially, what we're looking at is this move to cloud licensing for the OS and for the applications has had some very interesting security and licensing repercussions. If you went out and you bought an E1, an E3, or an E5 license because your pointy-headed boss said it's cheaper, and you have a couple of low-usage Windows application or Office applications, like say Project,
Sure.
guess what? You ain't allowed to run it anymore. If you use the proper cloud licensing, standalone bot products, i.e. anything you put a license code into.
Oh yeah, they don't work anymore. Yeah, that's true.
No, you've got to remove it, and you've got to find a different way of doing it. And the bean counters don't like changing things, so you've just spent a couple of tens of thousands of dollars on brand new licenses for software that, guess what, ain't gonna frickin' work. You also looked and said, well, it's more expensive to go the enterprise way. Let's investigate the pro way because I've got to keep a minimum of 500 computers going, or at least pay for a minimum. There are some other licensing repercussions. And the pro, I can still block Windows Store. It's okay. I won't have to worry about these idiots installing things.
Okay.
Microsoft decided to change their idea. And no, it's just the enterprise ones that are doing it. And by the way, even GPO ain't going to save you. You're going to have to hunt down your network guys and get the switches to start blocking Windows Store. Because otherwise, they'll be able to download whatever the hell they feel like.
Yeah, any Windows Store apps, right? Okay, so basically, if you had a business that was using Windows 10 Pro, like that's what they deployed.
Yep.
As opposed to Windows 10 Enterprise, like they just chose to go with Pro back at the beginning when Windows 10 launched, or, somewhat reasonably amount of time after it launched, right? So now you have this company that's on Windows 10 Pro on how many thousands of seats, who knows? And they have group policy disabled Windows Store. That's just how they lock down their network. And then this update comes out.
Yeah.
And then that policy, it doesn't even apply anymore. Like the Windows Store just works again.
Yep.
And the only way
the entertaining thing is there's a couple of applications on there which not necessarily inherently insecure, but state anything that you are using that's on this application is going to be publicly shareable.
Sure.
So all of those NDAs that you've got, all of that client proprietary data is now living side by side on an application. Well, it's easy to use. Yeah, and why is the client suing us because it's up online now?
See, that's what I don't understand. Like I think Microsoft might have to backpedal on this if they get enough blowback. Because you're gonna have companies like that, look, we validated this product on our network, and you just said, oh no, it was supposed to be the other way and only apply to the enterprise version. You telling me you're gonna segment out just a group policy thing that just stops working in a Windows build?
And it's even more ironic than that, because they're still coming to us begging to go to Windows 10.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, no, there's no way in hell. Even you pay us, we're still not going to do it.
That's the problem. This is the exact kind of thing that's going to scare people off of Windows 10 for that business.
And we're already scared off it.
Well, businesses that were considering it, and Microsoft is like, well, look, Windows 10 is going to be the last one. Like, you're just going to have to do it. Well, if people just don't do it, they're going to be stuck on 8.1 or even 7 for God knows how much longer, right?
There was just a spike of 3.1 that came up.
Well, yeah, but you're scaring...
Little drastic, but you get my idea.
You can't scare businesses off of the... that should just be one of those things if it was a mistake, assume it was a mistake. Oh, darn, Pro wasn't supposed to be able to disable this with the group policy thing or whatever. Well, guess what? You already pushed it out. It's already been out for months. Cat's out of the bag. You just own it at that point, and you just let the settings stick. You don't go breaking everybody's business and just letting people just run whatever Windows Store apps they want on a network that was previously locked down. That is just completely ridiculous. Yeah.
Apparently we're wrong.
Yeah. Microsoft, figure your crap out before you get more Linux users. Seriously. Anyway. All right, so there's that. Next up, Josh.
Me. If
What's
you
this
like
thing?
GitHub,
Yeah.
you'll like GitLab.
What's that do?
Because it's not, absolutely public. You can download GitLab. You can put it on your server. You can limit it to the people you want and not have the entire world see what you're working on. I set this up on an Ubuntu install. It's really easy. It's very configurable. And it's a really powerful and nice tool to use if any kind of software development.
So is this is this completely offline? If you put it on a server, it could be a complete standalone, not standalone like the server's by itself, but intranet thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, currently, in the company I'm working for, I've set this up on an Ubuntu server, and it's intranet only. They just log in and
That's cool.
get away.
Yeah. For companies if it's something you're maintaining that you can't just put on GitHub, then
Yeah.
that's
And
good
I
stuff.
mean, you can, plenty of options. I mean, you can still, I think on basis it runs NGINX as the web server, but you can change it to run Apache too, and you can apply SSL and SSH. Actually, SSH is built in already, so those command line junkies and that who want to create that connection, you're more than welcome to. It's easy, it's free, and it's pretty powerful for those who do that kind of development.
All right, cool. Next up, I don't have the link in the notes, Jeremy. Sorry, but just look at the screen over here. So, Anker, who makes we're always talking about Anker crap like USB chargers and all sorts of cool stuff.
I believe your pick last week was Anker USB cables.
My pick last week was cables, and then turns out they're making like iPhone and like just smartphone in general or tablet, real like glass screen protectors, which is kind of a sticking point of mine. I don't like a screen protector that's like a gummy, plasticky kind of,
I thought you liked it sticky.
No, that like self-healing stuff is great for like scratches not showing and stuff like that, but it sucks for like, it just doesn't feel the same as the glass that comes on the thing, right? Usually it's a much harder glass surface or some kind of Gorilla Glass that's kind of partially plastic or whatever. Regardless, it's not that just gummy stuff that your finger just kind of drags across, right? So if you're going to put a screen protector on something, and in my opinion, I like to go with something that's an actual piece of very thin glass that overlays onto the surface of that thing. Feels the same as the original product, except it's protected because if it gets scratched, well, it's the outer glass that gets scratched, right? And not only that, but these things they're selling for like 9.7-inch iPad Pro model from these guys, like $10. And like, 5.5-inch smartphone size ones from them was like running closer to $5. So like $5, you can have an actual glass screen protector that basically is just the same.
Yeah, that's significantly cheaper than the last time I looked at them.
Yeah, I think it's just, from what I saw, it's the Anker ones that seem to be really cheap.
Yeah.
Even compared to the competitors. So they came into the market somehow, and they're just undercutting everybody. So good on them. I like that. And that's my pick. And then I guess that's it for the show, so we can wrap up. So don't forget, pcpro.com/podcast is where you're going to find the show that I hopefully figure out how to edit and post tomorrow. And
Good luck on that, Allyn.
Yeah.
Godspeed.
Yeah, I did it semi-solo last week. I'll see if I can cover Phil Ken's...
Thanks, Ken, for showing up and helping.
Yes.
No problem.
Well, thank Ken for
You are appreciated.
doing the cha-cha with us tonight.
It was quite the cha-cha this week.
Okay, it was.
Yes, it was pretty bad. Like, if I was trying to set this up solo, I'm pretty sure it just would not have happened. Been like, sorry, Ryan. We have no internets. Twitter.com/Ryan Strout, Twitter.com/PCPer, or Twitter.com/Malmontano, or
Josh D. Walrath.
Josh D. Walrath, or
Jeremy Hellstrom.
make it easier, or
Ken_Addison.
or you had to be difficult.
Well, someone took it.
Someone took.
It's not my fault.
Someone took your
You can
name.
harass that guy, maybe. I don't know, but
Yeah, all right. Yes, that's it. With that, I'm Alan Malmontano.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
Oh, he said it like Ken was supposed to say his name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Ken didn't.
and good riddance.
Oh, okay. He really quits now. We've all just discussed him. All right.
He did the mic drop.
Good night, everybody.
If you enjoyed this content, consider supporting in-depth technical content by contributing at patreon.com/PCPer.